Okay, I would like to invite you to open your strategic plan, your booklet you received. I would like to take some time looking for the vision. I would like to share with you the vision we have for the stewardship department here. On page 3, it says, for every church member to establish the habit of putting God first in every area of life. So the question I ask to myself, what am I doing in that department? Why I am here? You know very well what the expectations of the administration are. What the administrators expect from you. You know very well. But then the second question we must ask ourselves is, what are God's expectations for my work in this department? So I believe that some administrators, I have worked with many kind of administrators, some of them would clearly expect from me to raise tithes and offerings. And they will say, you are there to raise tithes and offerings. But what are your expectations? What is the kind of vision you have received from God? What is God saying you to do? Is it really what our work is about? So I believe that we do not work with money. Stewardship directors and stewardship department does not work with money. Treasury works with money. We do not work with money. Treasurers, they should work with money. We work with people. I believe that we are the department responsible for raising the spirituality of the church. We are committed with the spirituality of the church. And we speak about tithes and offerings very clear, in a very open way, for one single reason. They are strongly connected with the spiritual reality of church members. If you would like to see your children in heaven, please teach them to tithe and to give promise. We call promise that kind of percentage-based offerings. And why I'm telling that? For one single reason. Jesus said, wherever your treasure is, your heart will also be there. When I understood that, I said to my wife, we need to work hard to educate our children, our 2 daughters, on that. This week, I got a call from one of my daughters asking me a question about tithe. She works as a missionary. Her salary is very, very low. She works almost as a volunteer. Now, EDRA has hired them. But even being hired by EDRA, they receive a very, very low income. And she and her husband, they are very happy in doing that. But she said to me this week, you know what? They think we are doing that only for a short time. So she said, the president of one field here asked me, until when you will be here? As saying, "Oh, I know this will not be for life." Then she said to me, "But Dad, we are here for life. We are dedicating our life to serve the Lord here and wherever the Lord will send us." And they receive a very low income. So she asked me this week, and she called me and she said, "Dad, do you think we should return tithe on gross or on," help me with the English,
After tax.
or after tax and all things? Imagine what was my temptation to answer, because I know their income is very low. So I was almost to say, but then I thought to myself, I need to tell her the truth. And I said, I believe that all our blessings from the Lord will bless you. And she said, okay, we will do that. And they have the plan of tithing. And they have the plan of promise. They have a percentage, fixed percentage. They are returning to the Lord as offerings. And they have savings. They have an emergency fund. They have savings. Actually, they don't have any place to expend their money there, because they live in the Amazon and in the Amazon forest. And so they don't have a place to spend that money. Even though their income is very low, they don't have how to use that money, so they use only to buy food, and that's it. They live in a very simple house. What we are planning for our children, more than connect their hearts to the Lord. So my work as stewardship director, my goal, my vision is to help every church member to establish the habit of putting God first in every area of life. And one very tangible way to do that is through our financial life. And then I ask you to follow me in the next page, our mission to help leaders and members. I believe we have some more copies here. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. To help leaders and members to develop habits necessary for spiritual growth and faithful stewardship. And then some may ask, why that emphasis on financial issues if stewardship is a so broad concept? And we in the stewardship department, we are not dealing with all facets of the stewardship concept, which is very broad. And we explained that on the last item on the page, let me see, page 5. We said, the third point. Recognizing that differently from many other denominations, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has assigned other departments to deal with almost each one of those aspects of stewardship. The Stewardship Ministries Department will therefore work mainly, but not exclusively, on the task of promoting trust in the Lord, second, faithfulness, third, a missionary mindset through financial stewardship, using the following approaches. And then, first point here, the first point, growing spiritually. We already talked about that. Everything we do to strengthen church members' spirituality is stewardship. Family worship is stewardship. Personal devotion is stewardship. Sabbath school quarterly study is stewardship. motivating them to read Spirit of Prophecy is stewardship. This is stewardship. Celebrating Sabbath, the beginning and the end of the Sabbath, this is stewardship. And now we have data supporting that. Very interesting. But then, what is our goal in this session here? So our goal here in the GC Stewardship Department is to have at least, you will see that on page 7, letter D. Our goal is to have at least 25% of church members renewing their commitment with the Lord through the commitment card. This here. How will we assess the spiritual growth? We cannot assess that. We cannot see if church members are doing their family worship. But I may know how many commitment cards I am using, at least to motivate them to do that. This is the way we found to measure that first item. Maybe you will find a better way to do that. But this was the way we found. The second point on our strategic plan is growing in nurture. And in this point, there is a very interesting thing, because before I heard some interesting data from Herbert Boger, after I heard, we changed that point. Because before, this point was to nurture members by teaching them stewardship, etc., etc., etc. But after I heard something Herbert told me, we decided to change the wording. And we put to nurture members before and after baptism, by teaching thoroughly all the truth to every new member before the baptism. And I challenge you to read Constance on Stewardship, pages 104 to 107, when Ellen White says that the reason for weakness in the church, so weak church members coming to the church, is because we do not teach them all the truth, expecting that they will learn after they come to the church. And that will not happen. So what Herbert told me, I already told you, but I will say again. He was studying, and they have a very easy way to do that, because they have all data interconnected in his division. And he decided to study 2 big conferences, wealthy conferences. And he studied the church members leaving the church in 2016 and 2015. And crossing data between secretary and treasury, they discovered that in one of those conferences, 85% of all members that left the church in those 2 years never tithed on their Christian life, at least in the Seventh-day Adventist church. What this may tell you, it may tell a lot of things. But one of things I can suppose under that kind of fact is that they came to the church without learning about tithing. And as Jesus said, if your treasure is not there, what will not be there also? Your heart will not be there. And I am preparing a presentation, is not ready yet. I am preparing a presentation about nurture and retention. This is a big concern in the world church. I am participating in a committee, in the Nurture and Retention Committee. People are trying to study, and I'm quite there. Because I know if I will say to them, stewardship has one key. Not all the keys, but one key we have for that. They probably will laugh at me. So I am quiet. I am trying to be quiet there. But I will need to speak someday and to say to them, people, Ellen White wrote a lot about that connection. And she says that churches are dead when people are not sacrificing their means. When they are not giving, churches are dead. And she says, would you like to bring life to the church? Teach them to give. Teach them to invest their means. You will bring life. So we are discussing nurture and retention, how to keep people in the church, how to close the back door. Let's stop that discussion. Let's teach people how to commit themselves with the Lord. I believe that we will do a lot of things. We will do better if we teach them to commit their lives to the Lord. So that's why this point, I consider that second point in our strategic plan very important, because stewardship department has a lot of things to do with nurture and retention of members. And I heard, unfortunately, I don't have the details and I forget where I heard that. So, but even so I will mention. So I do not have the source to support what I'm going to say. But you may repeat that in your field. I heard from another conference that studied members that left the church in and they discovered that, I don't remember now if there were 4 or 5 years before leaving the church, most of them stopped to tithe. So, first of all, you stop to tithe, and then after that, you leave the church. You don't simply leave the church while tithing. It will be very difficult for you to find someone, a tither, leaving the church. You will not find that. If you find, please tell me. It will be an exception. Because first of all, you leave God, and then you will leave the church. And the first thing, the first visible sign, in my opinion, this is only an opinion, right? In my opinion, the first sign that someone is leaving God is that you stop to tithe. Because when you do not trust the Lord, why giving money to the church? You will not give money to the church. But when you tithe, you are not giving money to the church. In your mind, you give money to the Lord. I heard Elder Presto telling me, he said me, probably I told one or two of you already that. He told me, I will tell you a very silly thing. And he said to me, I am almost ashamed to confess that. But he said, after I learned through the Bible that the Jews would offer moved offerings. Have you read that? Moved offerings. They will take the wheat and they will wave offerings. And they will wave that offering upward and downward, as saying, Lord, please accept my gratitude. And he said to me, I was thinking about that. So now I have on my house many envelopes. And when I fill my envelopes and I put a check inside, so he's not an e-giver. He said, I am alone in my house, no one sees me, but I close my envelope. I kneel on my office, and I take my envelope, and I wave my envelope. I close my eyes, I wave my envelope, and I say to the Lord, Lord, thank you so much. You are so good to me. Very interesting. So in this point, what we will do to measure our growth in nurture, if we are really nurturing church members. Here at the GC, we are going to evaluate it by seeing the analyzing the growth curves you will see in letter E, showing the percentage of regular tithers. In stewardship department, we do not value much tithe growing, tithe growth. We don't value tithe growth. What we value is the growth of tithers. That's what we would like to see. Because sometimes we are happy because tithe is growing, but it's only because of economic situation is different. People are receiving more income, and that's it. It doesn't mean necessarily that we are doing a good job in educating people. But when we study, when we analyze our secretary and we cross that with treasury, and we cross those data, and we see that we are getting more people in tithing, then we may expect that something good is happening in our education effort. So that's why in this second point, our goal is letter D, page 9, is to grow the percentage of regular tithers by 5% within this quinquennium. So we would like to see worldwide a growth in the percentage of tithers. And what we are doing to motivate stewardship education. There are many ways to educate church members, and many of you are doing good things on that. But we decided to emphasize one initiative. And that initiative you will find in under letter C, point 2, Holy Convocation events. Let me speak a little bit about the point 1. Series of Bible studies. Try to give a look on that in your division. What kind of Bible study series they are using to evangelize. And look to the stewardship part of that Bible study series. And try to influence so that stewardship training may be inside the Bible study series. We must have a good spiritual education when people are coming to the church before they are baptized. I expect that before they are baptized, they may already be tithing. That's what I was doing when I was district pastor. I will never baptize church members, a new member, before filling there is a, I don't know if you use that in your division, but before baptizing, we fill a form, thank you, with a lot of questions. Name, address, how you came to know the church, etc. Have you heard about spirit of prophecy? Many members are being baptized without studying that. Have you heard about stewardship? Many members are being baptized not listening about that. About Sabbath keeping. You know, one of my daughters was studying the Bible with someone. I told Herbert already that story. But she was just beginning to study the Bible. Just at the very beginning, 1-2 weeks. And then a lay evangelist came to that small church where they live. And during 1 week, that lay evangelist made a revival. And at the end, they asked people to baptize. And that lady, which was just beginning her spiritual life, decided to baptize. And baptized in the end of this week without receiving a complete Bible study series. So my daughter tried to say to her, perhaps you wait a little bit more to baptize, to learn a little bit more. And she said, no, I am very much convinced Jesus is so good, I will baptize next Sunday. So my daughter said to me, I decided then to invite her to come to my house to have lunch on Sabbath, so that on Sabbath afternoon I would kind of give her a lot of Bible studies about Sabbath, about a lot of things, tithes and offerings. But then, you know what was the answer? That lady said, oh no, I cannot go to your home on Sabbath, because Sabbath is the day I must go to the city to buy a lot of things. She would go to baptize on Sunday. And on Sabbath she will go to the city to buy a lot of things, you know. So we need to change some things. We need to ask the Lord to help us to understand. We must invest in nurture and retention before they are baptized. So let's give a good attention to our Bible study series. The second point is holy convocation. When we visit people with an agenda, I would like to show you here. Oh, sorry. I would like to show here in the website, if my computer will allow us to do that. He's a philosopher. He likes to think. He's a thinker. Yeah. My computer is a philosopher, you know? He's thinking. Yeah. And so if you go to our website, under resources, Penny is the one who is preparing all of those resources. And then you click in Holy Convocation Resources. Here under Holy Convocation Resources, you will find an explanation about what is Holy Convocation about. It's a 1-week meeting with all pastors of a conference, perhaps a union. It's a little bit more difficult to do it with a union, because usually unions have a lot of pastors. And then what we do on that week, simply saying to you, during mornings we train pastors, every morning. During afternoons, here we will have that video we saw on Monday. And then what is and what to do. I will open here. And I will ask you to follow me. So in the mornings, we do a pastoral council focused on stewardship. On afternoons, we visit people. We have visitation program. That visitation is key. It's very important. It's the most important thing we do in that event, is visitation. And then during the nights, the evenings, each pastor is going to preach in a church. We designate a church to each participant pastor. So in the morning we are together, learning, praying, very powerful times of communion with the Lord. We usually use the first 1 or 2 hours in the morning to encourage pastors to have their personal communion. So it's amazing to see. I was 1 month ago in Malawi, in the country of Malawi, and to see those, we would have there 140 pastors, all of them reading their Bibles by themselves, then studying their Sabbath school quarterly. Sometimes we plan pastoral councils, and they don't even have time to read their Bibles, because our schedule is so The pressure is so great that they don't have time to read their Bibles. But on this kind of counsel, we must keep with what we are teaching here. So we teach them to have their personal time with the Lord in the morning. They read their Bibles, they pray. It's so beautiful to see pastors kneeling and praying by themselves. Then they read their Bibles, they study Sabbath school quarterly. And after then, around 9:30, we will begin our pastoral council. So we officially put in our schedule their personal moment with the Lord. Then in the afternoon, they go to visit. But they will not go to visit church members, just to read a psalm or a Bible text and say a prayer and farewell. No, we have an agenda, a visitation agenda. And would you guess what are the points of the visitation agenda? These are the very points we use in the visitation agenda. So we go to inside their houses, church members, and we say, how I visit. I will tell you how I do that visit, how I go. I said something like that. As I told you, I was in Malawi. We were 140 pastors visiting at the same time. Imagine that. Imagine the impact on church members. So I was inside the house, and then I will say, you know that? We have the privilege to come here to your house. At the same time, now while I am visiting you, we have more 139 pastors visiting 139 homes at this just moment. And what are we doing? We are doing a revival and reformation program. We are calling members to a revived spiritual life. And before I leave your house, I have a commitment before God to leave with you some guidance for a revival in your spiritual life. So, I would like to make a spiritual checkup with you. Are you ready for that? And some of them are afraid, because when I say to do a spiritual checkup, they are afraid. And then I make them even more afraid. I say to them, I will make you some questions. Are you ready for me to make some questions? And they are not comfortable with that. And then I lower the pressures by saying, I will make some questions, but you don't need to answer them. Because the same questions I am doing to you, I am doing to myself, because I also need revival and reformation in my life. So I'm not coming to you as a pastor trying to teach you, but as a brother in Jesus Christ who also need to grow. So, which is my first question to you? How, the first point of the commitment card, I say, how is your personal time with the Lord every day? Are you reading your Bible? Have you time with prayer? Have you studying your Sabbath school quarterly? How is your family worship? And I speak a little bit about that. I explain to them how to do family worship in very few minutes. How to read their Bibles, how to have a personal plan of Bible reading, how to pray. We need to educate church members on that. Then I go to the second point. How are your relationships here in that house? Why this point is very important? Because the Bible says that God cannot accept our offerings if we are living broken relationships. So we need to mend those problems here, to fix them. So then I speak a little bit about faithfulness, forgiveness, and loving by principle. The next point, health reform. Health reform is so important. Remember what Tim Aka told us here? Health reform has a lot to do with stewardship. I don't have time to speak more about that now. But there's a lot a strong connection between health reform, health ministries, and stewardship ministries. Then the next point, TMI. Those who work for the Lord are those who are more prone to return their tithes and offerings, because they already are working for the Lord. They are giving Bible studies. They are participating on small groups. Then I ask them, how is the Sabbath here in this home? How are you here in this home keeping the Sabbath? At that point, they already know I am not there to make a pressure on them and to discover their secrets. They can see in my face that I am really concerned about their salvation, their spiritual life. So at that point, they are already open, totally open. I have visited hundreds of members, and never I saw some member with a bad face looking at me and saying, oh, why are you here? Never. Next point, tithe. I speak about tithe openly, clearly. And I said to them, how is the tithe practice here in your house? Are you teaching this to your children? And then I make a question. I said to them, do you think that if someone decides to return to the Lord a 12% tithe, is it right? Yes or not? Then they look to each other, and some of them say yes, yes. Others say no. And I keep questioning them. And then I say to them, you know what? Don't try to make God's plans better. Just stay on what is written. The Bible says that we should return to God. What percentage? 10%. That's a fixed percentage. God has chosen that. We should not make it better. Don't try to return 11%. Not even 15% as tithe. But not also 9% as tithe. Not 8% as tithe. Exactly 10%. You know, I was in the country of Paraguay. I was visiting a very wealthy man during a Holy Convocation event. And when I mentioned that man said, oh, Pastor, and he was a very committed man. They were very missionaries. They gave Bible studies and a lot of things. They committed with the church. And he said, oh, Pastor, now I see I am wrong. And I said, why you think you are wrong? Because, you know, my financial life is a mess. I receive a lot of money, but while I receive, I already pay others. And I don't even know how much I receive. So I give an estimate tithe. Perhaps some months it may be even more than 10%. But I am not really sure about how much is it. So I said to him, I believe that the Holy Spirit is impressing you. Because to be faithful on tithing, we must first organize our financial life. To know how much is exactly 10%. Because the Lord, that's what exactly the Lord expects from us. So, the next point is to dedicate a regular percentage of my income as free will offering. We call that promise. And then I tell them, you know the difference between regular offerings and tithe. There are many differences, but one of them is that on tithe, God establishes the percentage. But on offerings, you may establish the percentage. God gives you the opportunity to establish that percentage. But you know that I visit them on their homes, but at night, every night, I emphasize one of those points in the church. And then I preach a sermon. And on the last Sabbath, what I do, on the last Sabbath, we have the commitment call. And then we lead them to take a decision, a commitment. I would like to impress you with the importance to lead church members to a commitment. To educate in stewardship without leading them to a commitment is like to preach an evangelistic series for 30 nights and in the end just saying to them, bye-bye, we see you in another time. So we do nothing. We need to lead them to a commitment. So we educate, we preach about stewardship, and then we must lead them to a commitment. And this commitment card is a tool we can use to lead them to a commitment. This is very important. This commitment may be for a period of time. Usually, I suggest them to make a commitment for 1 year. And then in the last day of the year, when you go before the Lord, we do that in our home. I am already building my list of things I would like to thank the Lord on the 31st, December 31st, in our worship in our home. Each one of our family members will share their list. Why are you thankful to God today? And then after that, you will have the opportunity to renew your commitment with the Lord for the next year. Analyze your percentage. You may grow your percentage perhaps. But remember what we studied on Monday. Remember that quotation of Ellen White, when Ellen White says, in the system of tithes and offerings, remember that? Do you remember that? In the system of tithes and offerings, the amounts given will vary. Why they will vary? And then she says, for one reason, because they are proportional to the income. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So tithes and offerings should be given, I mean regular offerings. This is the most basic way of giving offerings. This is not the only way, but any other way to offer should be given in addition to that one. So we must teach, this is the very basic way of giving. The other end of the spectrum will be trust services. We are here in the beginning with regular offerings. The other end of the spectrum is trust services, when you give all. And we know that someday we will need to give all. But how to give all if I cannot commit to the Lord 5%, 7%, 10% of my income as offering? So we train church members to finally one day give all to the Lord, because we will not take anything to heaven. And Jesus is coming very soon. And you know what we studied today in Ezekiel chapter 7. There was a very interesting text. I was not planning to read it, but I will read it with you. It was 7 or 8, I don't remember. 7. Ezekiel 7. They will throw their silver, verse 19, into the streets, and their gold will be like refuse. Their silver and their gold will not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. We don't know when this will happen, but one day, what we have will not be in our hands anymore. And Ellen White says that before the day, we should ask to the Holy Spirit to guide us, to deliver all in the hands of the Lord, because Jesus is coming very soon. So this is an amazing truth we can share with church members. Okay, let me just go on this Holy Convocation issue, where the broad impact, the frequency, when we do that. We will not study here. We will not have time to study here. But if you are going to conduct a Holy Convocation event, I would like to ask you to study that, to read it, because every single point of this program has its place. So we only do that when we have a total pastoral involvement. All pastors participating. My conclusion after conducting this event many, many times is that if the president, if the treasurer, and if the secretary of that conference is not going to, they are not going to participate, I don't go to that event. I don't go to that event. If they are not committed to visiting along with church district pastors on the afternoons, I don't go. So before going, I ask that question to the stewardship director who invites me. Are you sure the president will be there? Are you sure the secretary, all departmental directors will be there? If they will be there, I go. If they will not be there, I don't go. Don't expect me to go, because it's useless. Pastor will not visit. If the president is not there, the president will not visit, the pastor will not visit. So don't fool yourself. If you cannot get their support, don't conduct that program. It will not work, right? There is a preparation to be done ahead of the program, months before. There's a preparation. One church for each participant pastor. So you cannot do Holy Convocation in any city. You should have in that city at least one church for each participant pastor. Okay? Food and lodging. Oh, now my computer is so nice. He's thinking again. He loves to think and show in colors of his mind. He is, yeah, he is.
While the
so
computer's
nice.
thinking, how do you manage the travel logistics with a big city getting pastors from a central location out to visit their members? I mean, there must be a lot of commuting time.
This requires a lot of strategy, and there is another word, I am trying to remember that word. When you, logistic.
Yeah.
There is a lot of logistic involved in that. You must really think about where to locate them, because they will need to meet every morning. In the case of Malawi, we had pastors living close to the churches. They were staying close to the churches. They will come on the mornings to the meeting, but it will be better to have all pastors sleeping in the same place, and then after lunch they go. Church members must be with them to carry them to visits. There is a lot of logistic and strategy in doing that, and you will find in this, my computer is not allowing me to go further. You will find on this website all guidance to do that, all guidance about how to do that, suggestions about to do that. What I was trying to say here was that in all things we do, we should show to them a pattern of what is the Adventist lifestyle. Even on the food we present. Very good quality food we should present. Also, we would like to encourage them, motivate them to exercise every morning, early in the morning. We will go with them to exercise. So I am so sorry I cannot. Please, if you can help me, my computer decided he loves to do that. We have a very good relationship. He's helping me on my salvation. This computer is helping me very much on my salvation. If I someday get to heaven, I will thank to that computer, because he is making me to develop patience. Thank you, brothers and sisters. So, about time and program. Usually we do that program during 1 week. And another very important point is stewardship exclusiveness. We usually don't share Holy Convocation with other emphasis. So sometimes the administrators would like to, let's mix, and it will not work. We should focus on stewardship on that week. Pastors should be prepared for what will happen. They must come prepared to visit church members. But perhaps the most important point on this Holy Convocation is spiritual diagnosis. How we conduct that spiritual diagnosis? Well, this is not easy to speak in some places. I realize that. We assume that not tithing is a possible indicator of apostasy, right? So one of our goals during this week is to reach that people who are not tithing before they leave the church. And if we are honest enough to say to ourselves, before God, I can testify that I'm not going to visit that people because I would like to have their tithe back, but because I am really interested on their eternal life. If this is our interest, God will be at our side and God will help us. But if we are interested on their money, God will not be with us. God cannot bless us with that kind of interest. So this is a very sensible issue. And in some places, we should manage it very carefully. So be very careful on that. But what we do, we study tithing patterns in the participant churches. That gives a lot of work. If you would like to see results on that program, this is the key issue. This is the backbone of the program. If you don't do that, you will only have a feast. You will only have a kind of celebration. That's it, a stewardship celebration. You will have nothing with that program. Because we need to choose those who are going to be visited. And then visiting them with the purpose. What we do is to mingle them with those who we call faithful members. For them not to think that we are only visiting those who are unfaithful. If they realize that, you may expect a bad reaction on the part of the church. So we should not say that, never. So we study the church financial records, we study that, and then after we identify those members who are in danger of leaving the church, leaving God because they are no longer tithing, we make a list of those members to be visited, and we mingle that list with other members also to be visited. If you don't do that, you know what will happen? The leaders of the church will take you to the sick ones. They will take to the wealthy ones they would like to honor with your visit. They will take you to the house of their friends. Oh, I brought you, the pastor, the visiting pastor, to your house. That's not the goal of this program. That's not the goal of this program. We should be proactive. We must know what we are going to do with that program. So this is very important to conduct a spiritual diagnosis at least 3 months prior to the Holy Convocation. So you should meet with pastor, treasurer, and imagine if you do that. I participated in a Holy Convocation, and they did a beautiful work many years ago with about 50 pastors. So it means that you should do that with 50 churches. And then, knowing beforehand, before the program starts, you should have the list of people that should be visited for each church. And each day, which ones will be visited day by day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's give a lot of work. But if we would like to have result on this, we should engage in this work. So, diagnosis, finding those to be visited, and then visiting them with purpose, with this kind of approach here. Then another important thing is to have suggested sermons for them to preach, to communicate church leaders before the program. I have participated in Holy Convocations, and when I arrive at the church members will not know what will happen. Oh, you are here, why? No. Holy Convocation should be advertised around the field. Church members should know that 100 or 50 churches would participate. Pastors would come from abroad, from far. It's a revival and reformation movement. We don't say it's a stewardship program. We don't say that. We say this is a revival and reformation program. And church members are very happy to know that. You usually offer a leisure day for pastors, usually on Monday, as the ministerial association suggests. So on that day, we take them to a beautiful place, let them to have sport, and we offer a good food to them. On that day, we usually don't visit, and we also do not have meetings in the mornings. Daily exercise is very important for pastors. Personal devotional time, I already spoke about that. The daily program we will see later. Renewal of vows, so important with pastors. Then visitation here. Select priority visits. Contact those to be visited before the pastor arrives. You are going to be visited. Are you going to be at home at that day? So the visits should be scheduled beforehand. We will have must have the visitation agenda, and visitations should usually last no more than 50 minutes. And meals or refreshments should be avoided during these visitations, making it possible to visit with more families. At the first day when I arrive at the church on Sabbath morning, I say, I am so sorry, sisters. I will not have that time the privilege to taste your amazing food here. Perhaps next time. Because we will focus on visitation. And besides that, if you eat in each visit, you will be sick in 2 days. You will not be able. So here, you will find the daily schedule, how to do day by day. Okay? Day by day, first weekend, during the week, Thursday to Friday, what to do last weekend, suggestive evening church program, some subjects to be presented to pastors during the morning programs. How to do in the morning programs with pastors. Then the daily call, Holy Convocation checklist. This is important. I will finish with that point here. This is the checklist. All pastors will participate, and during all the days, including administrators, has the information been spread? Pastors, church leaders and members already know about that. All of those people here are going to participate. About food and lodging. Are we going to serve vegetarian food? Are we able to offer them the most natural environment possible? Evening meal, how we offer evening meal. As they are visiting on afternoons, and after that they are going to the church, we usually schedule church members to entertain them before they go to the church. Usually they just offer fruits. I would like to them, I don't eat at evening, so I say, please, just fruits, that's enough.
No, that's not true, Marcos.
I was trying to do that.
Marcos, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
If you're kind of winding down, I just want to let these directors know that I went with you in Malawi. I wanted to see and experience this. Some of it might not work here in NAD, but I already did this in Quebec.
Wow.
And I said, you got to go preach for 7 weeks, have a 7-week program or 2 weekends. And I would encourage you directors, I paid my own way. Take a trip with Marcos. Pay your way to some other place in the world and experience this thing, and then really evaluate it. He let me speak. He even let me sing. And I just really appreciate it.
We were very much blessed by John's presence there. It was an amazing time together. He even visited me at the hospital. I was very sick at the end. You know, at that program we visited, tell me if you ever heard something like that before. We visited, I don't have the exact figures here, over 11,000 church members in 1 week. Can you imagine that? Over 2,000 homes we visit in 1 week with 140 pastors. How do we know that? Because every morning at the door there was a pastor taking the reports of the last day visits. How many visits did you do? How many persons were visited? And at the end of the week, more than 11,000 church members. So the program itself, the length of this program is planned for 1 whole week. The personal communion is on. Are we planning for personal communion? Are we planning for leisure time, for physical exercise, for pre-meeting on the first Friday evening? Is it that program with exclusive dedication to stewardship? A church to each pastor? Sermons have been prepared? Is the schedule balanced? Are we contemplating those areas of strength here? Will there be a call for commitment? This is very important. Are we conducting a spiritual diagnosis and choosing priority visits before the program begins? Visitation has been scheduled. Are we going to have renewal vows on the end of the program? We usually do renewal vows with pastors, and then those pastors will do in the churches. What are the results of that? I have talked to the stewardship director of one of the strongest union in South America division, which is the Central Brazil Union. they are the wealthiest in the South America division. They are located in the province of São Paulo. And they have a lot of very wealthy church members. That place was my last pastoral district before I came to stewardship. For you to have an idea, one of my church members, one of the deacons of the church, he used to go by helicopter to the boarding school to take his children on the weekends back home. He would take his helicopter and go there and take the children home. So we have such kind of also very poor church members, but we have all kinds of church members there. But it's a very wealthy union. You know what he told me? He said, we cannot no longer stay without Holy Convocation. We do it every year in every field. They have 7 conferences now. He said to me, in the first semester, my only work is going to Holy Convocations as stewardship director, because I need to follow each one of the conferences. I go with them. And you know what happened? The treasury said, you need to invest a lot of money to bring pastors, to prepare materials, to have them in a hotel or a place, to entertain them. But the treasurer says that the next month, that money they invested come all back. And then this trend keeps going up the next 3-4 months, and then comes down again. Then next year, when they do Holy Convocation, the income, tithe income, goes up again after Holy Convocation. And it lasts for 4 or 5 months and then goes back again. So they do it every year. And now he's told me, the presidents are the ones who call me and say, when will we have Holy Convocation? Because the presidents, not the treasurers, the presidents are willing to have Holy Convocation. They are inviting me to come to conduct Holy Convocation. So, this is the suggestion we are leaving with you on the second point. On the third point on our strategic plan, and then in the afternoon we will leave our strategic plan a little bit and go to other issues. The third point, growing generosity. Rationale, letter B. Offerings represent the compliant end of the systematic benevolence spectrum. The reality shows us that not every tither is a promisor. However, those who are promisors are also generally faithful tithers. Therefore, if our emphasis is on promise, you know what is promise, right? Promise is that kind of offering which is percentage based. We call it promise. Just a name. You will not find that name in the Spirit of Prophecy, not even the Bible. We just invented that name to give a name to that offering. However, those who are promisors are also generally faithful tithers. Therefore, if our emphasis is on the promise, we may expect that both tithe and systematic offerings will grow. Why they will grow together? There is a very simple reason. Because Ellen White says both are under the same system. It's impossible for you to teach about percentage-based offerings without speaking about tithe. Because both are under the same system. If you only emphasize tithe may grow and you will not have offerings. But if you emphasize promise, percentage-based regular offerings, the most basic way of giving, it's not the only way, but it's the most basic way of giving, then you will see, I assure you, you will see both of them growing. You will see tithes growing, but you will see offerings also growing. And if offerings will grow in your fields, what will happen? There will be not that much pressure from the side of local churches to use tithe, because that pressure is growing. They say, oh, you receive a lot of tithe, but we have nothing. So the solution is not give tithe back to them. The solution is raise offerings and to educate church members to give by principle. In the afternoon, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll go a little bit deeper on that. So this is the focus of our third point here. So our goal is to see that the average level of liberality of each church member reaches 5% of the members' income in offerings by July 2020. We are on our way to reach that. In speaking in worldwide, thank you, Penny. It will not be easy to reach that 5%. Now in the world, we are in average giving, each church member is giving 4.16% of his or her income as offerings. All offerings. Maybe, yeah, your treasurer told me that there may be some problem with the data of your division, maybe. But we based on what the archives, the GC archives gave us. So, and they gave us the same data from all divisions. And that's why we only have up to 2015. We would like to have more recent data. But you know what? When I am called to be stewardship director in a new region, a new conference, a new union, a new division, a new place, this is the first information I would like to know. To me, this is the most important information to help me to work. I would like to know, in average, how much of their income church members are given as offerings. Why? Because when you return tithe, you are not being generous. You are being honest. That's it. If you do not return tithe, you are not honest with God. But you only begin to really give something after you already returned tithe. Then you begin to give, because you will exert your power of choice. In the tithe, you only choose to give or not to give. But if you choose to give, it must be 10%. But on offerings, you must do two choices. The first one is to give or not to give. The second one, how much I will give. What is the percentage I would decide to give to the Lord? So it requires additional thinking, additional choices. So if my emphasis is on offerings, I will help them to develop generosity. That's why we call this the generosity factor. So I will encourage you to find out, to study that. When I was stewardship director in a conference, Boger was a district pastor there, and Boger will help me not to lie alone. So when I was a stewardship director on that conference, I would try to send regularly to district pastors that information about their district and each church of the district. What is the is the generosity factor of your district? What is the generosity factor of each church? It will give me a lot of work to do that. My assistant would be crazy because, you know, if you have 30 pastoral districts, to find out those data and to send it in a time that we would not have, as we have today, a lot of softwares and things like that, it will give a lot of work. But I will expect each district pastor on my field to know that how much of their income church members are giving in terms of percentage. This is a very important information. And my personal goal is to see that percentage growing, and growing. How do I do that? First of all, this is the main tool. And my decision was when I was the first time stewardship director in a conference, I was praying about that. And I was impressed to do something very strange, to make a commitment call once a year at least with pastors of my field. So when my time came in the pastoral council each year, I was expected to share my work program, you know, my strategic plan with pastors, but it is boring for them. Pastor would like to listen to you about the strategic plan, about your program. They will just close their eyes and wait that time to finish. So I decided not to do any more of that. I asked the president permission to use that time to make a call to them, because each year you receive new pastors. And also the old pastors must grow on that generosity. So it was a challenge time for me, because it was for me very difficult to speak to pastors and to ask them to trust in the Lord, because this is what it is about, trusting in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. Don't trust in money. Trust in the Lord. The Lord is so good to us. You know, on Friday, unfortunately, I didn't tell you before, but you were not supposed to do your commitment on Monday along with the administrators, because we were planning to do it on Friday, but I forgot to tell you that. So I was planning on Friday to invite you to make a commitment, but Thursday, sorry, sure. And 1 month ago, I told to my wife, you know, we are going to make a commitment call with stewardship directors, and what about to raise our percentage again? Because after we arrived here, we already raised our percentage. God led us to do that. And we are not lacking anything. And now we felt, before that advisory, that God would be inviting us to raise again our percentage. And I was a little bit afraid, uncomfortable with that idea, because we are moving to a new country. We need to buy a lot of things. We don't have even furniture here in our house. We are trying to, first of all, to build our emergency fund. I am learning a lot from Dennis. You know Dennis Carson. I am learning a lot from him. And he said to me, at least you must have 3 paychecks in your emergency fund. The amount equal to 3 paychecks. But the ideal is 6 months salary as your emergency fund. So I talked to Mari, and we decided, and you know, when we arrived here, we began our life from zero, because we sold everything we had back in Brazil, which was not much. But you know, how much you received when you sold a 30 years old furniture with a lot of termites on it?
It's become antique.
It's worth nothing. So we gave a lot of things, and even giving people would not like to come to pick them up. So nice were them.
Bonus return.
Yeah, and then that money when we received, suddenly, you remember what Presto told us yesterday, Brazilian currency, and just on that time, went down. From day to night, it went down. So we came here with almost no money. And by the grace of God, we already have our emergency fund established. We have our emergency fund. And I was in need. I will tell you only 2 stories. After we arrived from Malawi, I was in need to reform part of my home, the basement. And it will need oven and not oven, the top, how we call that? Stove. Oh, thank you. I will need a stove and also a countertop. I was planning to buy it not of granite because it's very expensive. So the man who was supposed to do that work said to me, okay, we must buy the stove. You buy and bring to me, and I can do it. And also the countertop. So I was wondering which kind of stove I would need to buy, which brand, where is the cheapest place. So, and I was preparing for the advisory. So I said, oh, I know, I will call a brother from my small group. We have a small group on Fridays. So I called him, and he said to me, because he works on this kind of stuff. He said to me, what do you need, Pastor? Oh, I need to buy a stove, and I need to buy a countertop, a cheap one. He said, Pastor, you don't need to buy anything. Why I don't need? He said, because I already have a lot of them in my home. He built new houses. He makes reformation on houses. I don't know if I'm saying the right English. Renovation. And when he renews, he take all the old stuff, and he stores the best ones. He stores in some place to help people. And he said, you may choose one granite countertop. I have many. You just come and choose. It's worth many dollars. So I said to my wife, you know, we have not even renewed our vows, because we will do that during the advisory. And God is already blessing. I am not saying that I am rich. God will make me wealthy. I will have. No. Simply God is helping me to avoid expenses. God is saying, I know you. I know your needs. This is amazing. So when we commit our financial life with the Lord, we have that kind of experiences. I will tell you one more. We need to buy another car. And we are praying for that since before going to Malawi. I even got some suggestions from John, very good suggestions. And finally, we decided to buy a used car and not to deplete our emergency fund. To keep our emergency fund, well, we will buy a very old car now. And later, we are planning to renew it. But then we decide that kind of car. And I discovered a pastor willing to sell that exact car we were looking for. So I sent him a WhatsApp. He was far from the States. He was abroad. Are you willing to sell? He said, no, we decided to keep that car. So I said to Mari, well, that's okay. God will lead us to another direction. So 2 days before, on Monday, we were arriving at the GC, and while driving, Mari and me, we were talking about that. So in a stoplight, we decided to pray. And we said, Lord, you are so powerful. We don't know where to buy. Which is the one, is the good one? We put in your hands. Please, God, act on that. We would like to buy the exact car you are preparing for us. We don't want to buy any other car. We would like to accept your guidance. So my wife left me on the parking lot. When I came inside the GC, I met that pastor. And you know what was his answer to me? He said, are you still willing to buy that car? I said to him, are you meaning you are changing your mind? He said, maybe I must be convinced on that. And then I left him because our worship was beginning. Yesterday I told to my wife, I will keep quiet because if I press too much, the price will raise. So I will keep quiet, but praying. Lord, we are committing part of our finances to your hands. Now you are in control of our lives. This is so beautiful, so good to know. God will not make me rich. I will never be rich. I will never be a wealthy person. But I am sure that the Lord is controlling our financial life because He promises that on His word. He promises that. So it's so good to know that. And it's so good to share that kind of experiences with church members. But we do that when we have those experiences. So I would like to invite you again. I know you already did this kind of stuff here. But I would like to invite you again. Please be firm on what you have voted, on the percentages. And you may expect answer to your prayers. The Lord is so good. The Lord is so good.